All right, hi Naomi. Thank you so much for joining me here today on Vonvo.com. Today's date is April 27th, 2013. Just before we get our conversation started, I wanted to go over two quick things. The first is that right now this conversation is being recorded, and after the recording is completed, we'll be uploading this video to the internet to our YouTube channel. Is that okay with you?
Yep, that's fine.
Great. And then on top of that, here at Vonvo, we're all about our discussions staying both civil and valuable. We don't want there to be any personal attacks against anyone who might join the chat room later on. So are you fine with that rule as well?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, great. So then let's get our conversation started. Would you mind just giving a quick background of yourself to anyone who watches this video, and as well as just share with us why you're so passionate about this CISPA topic?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Naomi. I'm a junior at SUNY New Paltz in New York State. I'm a Black Studies major with a minor in journalism. I guess I'm interested in this topic because I think it's very important to the American citizen. I think internet rights and freedom are a very important topic that affects everyone in this country. We have so many different groups, anonymous, we have like hackers, and at the same time, we have this platform that can be used to connect so many different people globally, but at the same time, it can be used to attack the government, attack our own political systems and freedoms. So I just think it's important for everyone to understand what's going on and understand how it affects them personally.
Right. So what exactly has been taking place, and what's this CISPA thing all about? Would you mind just sort of briefing us on that to just start off?
Yeah, sure. So CISPA is the Cyber Intelligence Security Act. I think part of the reason why it's so important is that there's the issue that people are arguing that it violates the Fourth Amendment right, that guards against unreasonable search and seizures. This would allow the government to just take or be given information from ISPs, private information from like any type of internet website like Facebook or Google, and it can be given to them like straight to the government without a warrant, and the person themselves who may be prosecuted wouldn't even know that their information was given until after the fact.
Right.
Mm.
And so did it just sort of pop up though? I feel like recently in the news, I feel like it sort of came out of nowhere, or more so like snuck by people while they weren't looking. You know what I mean? Was it really just during the this Boston bombing thing? Is that when it really took place, where it started to get more attention and no one was sort of paying attention to it?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, CISPA's been around for a while. Earlier this year, there was a huge debate about CISPA when it was first going towards the House because it was passed in the House, and luckily it was shot down by Senate. But CISPA itself was, CISPA was given to the House, and the House itself was voted by 224 votes to 189. I mean, it's been around for a while though. I thought it was widely known.
Mm-hmm.
So. Um,
So was it? It just passed the. It just recently passed the House of Representatives, right? So did it get
yeah.
passed over to the Senate and has already been rejected over there recently, or is it now?
Yeah, it was sent to the Senate. I think on the 25th or the 26th. No, the 25th because the 26th was yesterday. And it was shot down.
Really? So does that mainly mean that there's not really going to be too much more talk about it, or is it just going back to be amended a bit and it's going to rise back up any day now, or what's the talk on that
I
front?
personally think it's probably going to rise back up. The problem with CISPA is the fact that it's so vague. The language in the bill was so vague that it could give the government rights to spy on its citizens without a warrant. Um, and the companies who are giving this data wouldn't be liable. Um, so after the Senate pushed it down, Obama also had said that he would veto the bill if it had passed in Senate. Meanwhile, there's also another bill that was created called HR 1580.
Mm-hmm.
Just days after the House had signed CISPA into effect and sent it off to Senate, Congress's Energy and Commerce Committee had signed a bill that would set in motion legislative measures to give the government complete control over the internet.
Really?
Yeah.
So
So that's
yeah, go
still
ahead.
going on. That's still ongoing. And there's about two other HR bills as well that have similar language that are being sent also to Senate, but it's not widely talked about.
Right. So, I mean, what do you think is going to come from this? The fact that, like, if something like this was passed, or does get passed, at a future time, I mean, what do you think the impact's going to be on just average citizens such as you and I? Are we going to actually like see it happening in front of us? We're going to know like that, that someone's either like watching our browsing habits or stuff like that, or do you think it's just going to kind of go unnoticed and it'll go into effect without us even realizing?
I mean, most likely. I mean, technically, this bill is supposed to be used for outside sources, outside governments, hackers. They're trying to protect against another type of WikiLeaks situation. Um, I don't necessarily think it would affect the everyday citizen like you or myself. It's more so supposed to be used. I mean, unless you're doing something illegal on the internet, they're not really specifically gunning for people who are illegally downloading music. But at the same time, we still have like the situation of Aaron Schwartz, where when you do download information, uh, like sources and intellectual information, the government can still gun for you. So on the one hand, I wouldn't necessarily think the everyday citizen would be affected because uh, we're not the people that they're necessarily looking for. We're not the people that are the reasons why this bill was put into effect. At the same time, there's always a chance because everyone does something somewhat illegal on the internet.
Right. So, what's your take on? I mean, the idea is like in the media. I feel like this topic really didn't get much play, and so do you think there's like a particular reason behind that? Why no one's really sort of hearing this, or they hear it, one little instance, and then it sort of goes away? Do you think it's something that should be getting more publicity than it is?
Definitely. I think a big problem that I've had recently with mainstream American media is the fact that I feel it's definitely dumbed down in the past few years. CNN doesn't really, especially with the Boston bombings, their coverage was kind of pathetic and not what you would expect from such an accredited worldwide news source. Um, Fox News as well, as in general, they usually don't have the most accurate information. Um, a lot of the news sources I use to find out about American news are actually overseas. I like to read the Russian Times, Reuters, um, the Now News. There's a lot of like American news and coverage that doesn't really get the type of sources that it should and the time that it should. I would say that's somewhat deliberate on the American. Uh, I don't on the government's part, I guess, in a sense. I mean, I guess they would have some type of input, but at the same time, I feel like it's more so just the fact that American news has definitely dumbed down in the last few years.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, what do you think? Like, I know one of the things that they were talking about in the one of the things they were saying in the media that I at least heard was that, or maybe it was through an article that I read, but they were saying that this might require regular average citizens to hand over like their Facebook accounts to their employees or
Mm-hmm.
stuff along those lines. I mean, isn't that stuff that kind of already happens? And this like, or to some extent, doesn't it happen in some places? So wouldn't this or
Yeah.
so would this be anything really different, or was there something else part of that that you know I was missing that I wasn't really understanding exactly?
Well, I think the there definitely are situations where employees will ask for their employers will ask for their employees' Facebook accounts, their social media handles, and such. But at the same time, when you hear about situations like that, it's illegal. The whole point of CISPA is that it would be making those actions perfectly legal and perfectly fine. If you were an employee, you wouldn't have any choice but to hand those over. Right now, if an employer asked you for your Facebook account, you could say no. And I mean, obviously, the employer could attempt to fire you, but you could bring them to court. And because right now, asking for your personal privacy is illegal, but if CISPA had been passed, it would have been perfectly fine for that to happen.
Right.
What was really ironic to me with this whole CISPA situation was the fact that President Obama had said that he would veto the bill if it had gotten passed in Senate. Meanwhile, uh, the Obama administration already has illegally accesses our ISP service and like they already do all our information as to what we do on the internet, who we're speaking to, and how often we speak to them.
Mm-hmm.
And as well, like basically what happened was that there is a cybersecurity program that monitors online traffic, and it already enforces CISPA-like data sharing, and it's been going on for like the past year. Recently, the Electronic Privacy Information Center filed the Freedom of Information Act, and they got over 1,000 documents of secretly authorized interception of communications by AT and other internet service providers, and given to the DoD, Homeland Security, etc.
Right. So do you think they'll ultimately like that should or shouldn't be allowed? I mean, is that like, let's say, like do you see any sort of rationale behind why some of these things are necessary? Like passing a bill like this should be allowed. Like what on there's obviously another side of the story. So those that are supporting it, let's say to protect, let's say different e-commerce sites, make sure that people aren't selling stuff illegally, or just make sure people are behaving properly on the internet. Do you see any reason why that should have any sort of restrictions, or there should be any sort of monitoring taking place?
Definitely. I mean, cybersecurity is something that's in this year 2013 that's really important. I mean, we have a few months ago there were reports that China had been hacking our governments and hacking the government system for the past year multiple times, and there were multiple attacks coming from one specific source. At the same time, we have hackers and people who individually have the knowledge that are able to do so many different things with the internet, hack into people's personal accounts, hack into personal mainframes and private mainframes, that and if that information gets into the wrong hands, could be really detrimental to our personal safety and privacy. At the same time, the government, if they do have this sort of information, if they have the capability to hack into private information, there is always a chance that they could stop terrorist attacks before they happen if they have the information beforehand. There are certain people who are on watch lists already who the government already monitors. So by having the access to their private information, there's a chance that they could figure out terrorist activity before it happens.
Right. And so you think that that is enough reason to, let's say, allow, bills like this to take place, or ultimately it's just got to be a different bill with more cleaner cut language that is, pushed through. Is that it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, as an American, you want to feel safe in your own country. With the amount of terrorist attacks in the past few years, the amount of enemies that the United States have grown over the past few centuries, we have a target on our back. There are a lot of different organizations and peoples who would like to harm the United States and would like to harm the American people. At the same time, you're violating an amendment right by putting a bill like this into effect. While at the same time you may be preventing a terrorist attack and maybe discovering a terrorist attack.
Sorry about you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I heard that.
Go ahead.
While we may be discovering terrorist activity early on, we're also violating our own citizens' rights and looking into their personal information when it's really none of our business, as well as giving, as you said, giving employers and other people who have no right to your private business access.
Mm-hmm.
So personally, I feel like if a bill like this comes to pass, the language has to change. There has to be specific guidelines. For example, that whole employee private social media thing, that shouldn't be in the bill at all. I don't understand why an employee should have a right to my private information.
Mm-hmm.
I guess since the government technically already does this anyway, putting a bill like this doesn't really matter into effect because they're already doing it.
Right.
They're already technically violating wiretap laws, so by putting it into a bill in black and white, I mean, at least it's clear cut and you know exactly what the guidelines are, what the rules are, and what they're doing, and what they're not allowed to do.
Right, so I mean, that's just like an interesting point. The fact that they're doing certain things like this already, like, where does it sort of stop? Like, I'm trying to figure out what ends up like taking place. What is it someone end up even doing? Does anything happen, or is it just stay like status quo sort of thing, or is anything going to actually happen with changing the way this is? Because it only looks like it's being changed right now to strengthen it, right? So.
Yeah. I mean, what's kind of ironic about this whole situation and this whole bill is the fact that before CISPA recently came up again to be passed into Senate, there was the UN wanted to pass a global bill that would give each individual country and government the right to control their own internet inside their own country. And the United States was very adamant that they didn't find that legal. They thought it violated personal freedoms. And not even a few months later, they're trying to pass a bill that says that it's perfectly fine for them to do it in their own country, but it's not okay for the rest of the world to do it.
Right.
So, like, basically, the United States wants to have the power over the internet, but they don't want other countries to have that same power and capability.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting maybe how maybe like some of the other outside countries might be impacting like what bills are, being written up to. Like, I'm just trying to wonder, and maybe you can answer this, like, how does, China cybersecurity and them like trying to hack into our own like cyber world here in America, like, how do you have any idea how this sort of bill might like protect us a bit better from those outside countries? Is there any part of the bill that relates to that might like ease people's tensions and nerves, like similar to yourself, about what this bill is all about?
Well, the bill didn't really have anything to do with outside hackers and sources trying to attack the government mainframe. It more so just had to do with what the government's rights are inside the United States towards privacy laws of its own citizens. It didn't really address outside sources. But even in the case of China, when they hack our databases and try to find out government information, we do the exact same thing to them. So it's kind of quid pro quo. We think that we have the right to basically do whatever we want. We think we have the right to tell people and violate our own personal rights and amendments. Meanwhile, it's not okay for anyone else to do it to us. And if they do, they will be stopped immediately. But if the United States does it, it's perfectly fine.
And so you think that that's just like, that's wrong ultimately? That sort of position is just not, so that's not going to fly any longer?
No, I think the United States will continue doing what it always does. I mean, we are the world's superpower. We're kind of cocky because of it. We think we have the right to do what we want to do when we want to do it, and so far we haven't been proven wrong. I mean, when the UN wanted to pass a bill like this, we immediately rallied up all the troops. We gave a whole spiel about how it wasn't right to tell other governments and give them the right to put a hindrance on the internet. The internet is free for everyone. Meanwhile, we do the same thing to our people. So it's not okay if anyone else does it, but it's okay if we do it. And so far, no one has said anything or moved against that effect. I mean, no one has stopped us from doing our wiretapping or our privacy sharing, illegal privacy sharing. So, I mean, and we might think that we have the right to privately and illegally access our people's information and share it and search through the internet for hackers. But at the same time, the other governments aren't necessarily stopping us, so they're not saying that we're not allowed to do that, which is why we continue to do it.
Right. So do you think that is changing? Do you think that other outside countries are gonna like start to kind of push back against what we're doing in these other nations, and potentially it's just gonna have a negative impact on the country because we're sort of trying to take advantage of too many, let's say, smaller powers and trying to be a little bit too cocky?
Honestly, no. I mean, we've been doing this for a long time, and we're going to continue to do it for times coming past. I wish that we didn't do necessarily do the things that we do, and I kind of wish that maybe another one of the smaller nations would stand up against us. But at the same time, we have the biggest military, we have the biggest military force and military capabilities and nuclear powers. We have the most number of nuclear allies and military allies. So at the same time, who exactly is going to stand up against us? And also some of our own allies are other countries that still like want to hack us and want to know what we're doing behind their back, the same way that we want to know what they're doing behind our back.
Right. Yeah. I'm also wondering, like, there was that whole SOPA Act, right? And
hmm
we could actually dive into that a little bit if you want. Do you know what? Because I was going to bring up some of like the larger companies that were really, really against that, but then I think that some
hmm
larger companies kind of came out in support of this CISPA bill. So do you want to maybe tackle that? What were maybe? Do you know what some of the differences were between the two different bills? Did they fall along the same lines, or were they totally different in their objectives?
Well, SOPA had to do with copyright infringement, and CISPA is all about letting the government spy and take private information without a warrant. SOPA had to do with if like online trafficking in counterfeit goods and copyright infringement. So, I mean, they both have to do with doing like trying to stop people who are doing things on the internet that they're not necessarily supposed to be. Meanwhile, CISPA is specifically going after people who do illegal things with your data. And CISPA and SOPA just had to do with specifically trying to find what, like, if you've done something like copyright infringement or something.
Right. So why do you think some of the like why were some of these like huge companies like totally against the SOAP Act, and then some others were like supporting the CISPA bill? Was there any reasoning behind this? Like, because there was, I mean, in the end, is it because like it kind of came and went, this CISPA bill? Um, I mean, it's just interesting because there was like a crazy uprising. Like, didn't Wikipedia shut down for like 2 days or something?
Yeah. I mean, I think part of it was also just the fact that I mean, when SOPA first came up, CISPA had come up at the same time with it, and then they both disappeared. And then recently, CISPA has just come back up, and I feel like a lot of people didn't really realize that CISPA was still being had recently come up. I mean, there were groups who were against CISPA this time. Anonymous were very disgusted by CISPA because this would obviously affect them directly. Google, Reddit, Yahoo. I don't know. I feel like a lot of companies were still like against CISPA and didn't want to bring it to pass as well. Which companies were supporting CISPA?
Um, which ones? What are it? Oh man, I want to think. Like, I remember seeing an article, and I don't want you to take this as a fact, but I want to say that I remember reading an article that was giving like a brief outline of CISPA, and like it said something about at least when the immediate bill like was released, a while back when it first started getting introduced and talked about.
Mm-hmm.
I want to think that I saw like companies such as like Google, like being in supportive of it, but
Oh, really?
yeah, but maybe I definitely remember seeing some larger tech companies like not really having at least a problem with it then, but perhaps as soon as the past 2 weeks, they might have come out a little bit more against it. But another interesting
Mm-hmm.
item is that like I think it's like just lobbyists that are anti, free cyber, space, and the amount of money spent to push, internet oversight and security, with regards to the CISPA bill, as opposed to, you know, uh, the lobbyists that were for freedom of the internet. There was just apparently there was like a 38-to-1 like ratio of number of dollar amount spent. I mean, I can't verify it, but I know for a fact I read an article about that. So it's just interesting that they were trying to push it through so hard and put so much money into it, but yet now it just got rejected from the Senate. So I wonder, is it considered like a huge waste now, or is it or like is it just waiting until the second round to take another stab at it?
I mean, I definitely don't think CISPA's gone for good. They're definitely gonna revise it. They might just rename it something else. Take different parts of CISPA and try to individually pass those different parts as laws and bills into effect to try and, I guess, kind of trick the American public. I mean, they're already trying to pass certain parts of CISPA. The HR 1580 is another bill that would it would give the government complete control over the internet, and not a lot of people have heard about that. I think there's also another two bills that are trying to get passed as well right now, but there aren't a lot of news sources that are talking about it. I mean, I think part of it is also the fact that CISPA got so much press. It was such a big bill. It had so many different parts to it, which when people heard about it, it was much easier to dislike it, to try and put it down. The vague language put certain things into black and white. The fact that the government was trying to be somewhat sneaky with their power and their power when it comes to the internet. But I definitely don't think CISPA's gone. I don't think SOPA's gone, because as long as there is an internet, the government is always going to want to have some type of control. They want to be able to see what everyone's doing. They want to be able to properly protect itself and protect its information and protect its secrecy.
Right. That's great. So let's see here. I know in a few minutes I have to actually, we have a discussion on the whole Boston bombings taking place. So I guess, what I would ask next is, and maybe lastly, like what message would you send to the world, regarding this bill and how it might pop up again in the future, whatever it might be. What message would you send to people about CISPA that you think they should definitely know?
I think the most important thing is to stay informed. Maybe have a Google News alert or something about CISPA. I think it's the most important thing is the fact that the government wants specific control over the internet. They want to be able to see exactly what you're doing, and if that information isn't given to them willingly, they want to be able to take it, and they want to be able to take it without any knowledge on your part. And I think it's important to know that this bill itself is completely illegal. It's violating personal rights given to you by the amendment, by the Bill of Rights, and rights that are given to you as an American citizen that may not, that other countries don't have and other citizens don't have. And these rights and these personal freedoms are very important. It's important as an American citizen to know your rights and to know that the government doesn't necessarily have the right to that information. I think it's also important to know that although CISPA did not pass this time, it's going to come back. And also know that although CISPA didn't pass, the government is also already doing several things that CISPA wanted to bring to pass already. So some of these illegal the information sharing between your internet service providers and the government are already going on.
Right. Do you think there's anything that can be done on like a on an individual basis that can help in raising awareness or do something about it, like tangibly, and prevent something like this happening?
Well, I think that social media is a great tool in getting a good an amount of information out to a large amount of people very quickly. So I think if there's information about CISPA that you'd like to share, that's a great tool to use. I also think that if you are against CISPA, contact your local legislator, contact governor, senators in your area, and give them a call and tell them, I'm not a fan of CISPA. I don't believe that it's technically legal. You're violating my Fourth Amendment right. And I, as my local government, you speak for me, and I am not a fan. And if you vote this bill into pass, I won't be voting for you next term.
Right. All right, great. And do you think maybe uh, forums like a Vonvo could be good places to actually discuss these bills and raise awareness and inform individuals about what's actually going on with these topics?
Yeah, definitely. I think that having a discussion is always a great way, and having a video platform like this that can bring so many different people from different places in the world through the internet and your computer and like a webcam is a great way to have a discussion and a great way to bring new information to light.
Great. All right. Thank you. Thanks so much for participating and sharing your knowledge with us. We'll obviously get this video uploaded to YouTube, and then we can share it from there. And thank you once again for joining us, and we're happy to have you back on again for any other subjects such as CISPA or others that you might be passionate about.
Okay, thank you. This was fun.
Yeah, no problem. You got it. All right, have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye.